Report of the city manager. Greg, last time.
Oh my gosh.
Wow.
Thank you.
Oh, I get 3. Who are we missing?
Here's another one.
Well, seeing that this is my my last address as city manager, and probably, well, not probably, the last time I'll be speaking in this venue, I thought that I would do something a little bit different. It's been about 5.5 years since I took this position, first as interim and then as permanent. And I think that the problem in any organization, particularly in local government, is that we spend a lot of time talking about what isn't getting done, talk about a lot of time about what hasn't getting done, and a lot of time about what should be getting done, and at times not necessarily spending the right amount of time of what is actually happening. It's easy to overlook the accomplishments of local government in the middle of a political situation, a crisis, or other activities. But I also think that the first step in setting goals for the future is recognizing where we came from. And so what I would like to do tonight, if you'll humor me for a few minutes and not use the clock, Noga, is let me spend a little bit of time talking about the last 5.5 years. And I want to put an emphasis on this. This is nothing the only coincidence is that I happen to be here for this period of time. Other than that, there's nothing else to it. The people that matter are in the back of the room. I would ask if you guys can stand up for a second. Ryan, Brian, Guy, Yuka, Kayla, Rodrigo. That's the reason why local government works. I'm delighted that tonight that priorities or goals are on the City Council's agenda. It's something I've advocated for and asked about for 5 years. It's actually something that I've done every year since I got here with the department heads, is we talk about looking forward based upon what we did in the last year. And we use goals for this year and reviewing how we did the next year. What can we do better? What resources did we need that we didn't have? How can we work better? But it is about senior staff. So if I think back for the last 6 years and the various advancements, I really, after a lot of thought, kind of comes down to 5 areas. One is what we've done in personnel. The single most important asset the city has are 160 employees, full stop. We can talk about the beauty, we can talk about the school district, we can talk about the proximity to New York, but the reason why this city works the way it does is because 160 people show up every day and do the things that they do. We have made an unprecedented investment in public service, in emergency services in the last 6 years. And I'll go into some detail of that in a minute. Capital projects, in the face of Ida, in the face of COVID, the amount of money that the city council, this city council and prior councils have invested in infrastructure is historic, and that it will continue. Technology, and this is something that is behind the scenes. You don't see it, except what you do see is residents not having to come to City Hall to do everything they need to do. It's the way in which we use phone systems and the computer systems and the internet for the website has been tremendous. And then the last thing I want to touch on tonight is what senior staff initiatives have done. The City Council does things from the dais as it relates to policy. Senior staff takes initiatives that you don't see and the community doesn't see until we're asking you for money or if we're asking you for powers to execute contracts. And I think it's important for you to see as well as for the community to see. When it comes to personnel, The changes that have been made in the last few years under Yuka's leadership have been transformative. We have gone from the equivalent of a personnel clerk to a fulsome human resource officer and everything that goes with that, whether that is support for issues at home, whether that is for better training, whether it is for the socialization to create a better environment around City Hall, to improving facilities. It has been an unbelievable 2 years. We have, since I arrived, we have been doing goal setting and reviews for all the senior staff, and that is so that we are all on the same page of what are we doing from an administrative standpoint to move the city forward. Succession planning is an interesting concept. It's something in the private sector that we all take for granted, that you're going to have leadership that grows over time, and there's always going to be someone to backfill when someone leaves. In local government, it's always a little bit more difficult. But I'm extraordinarily proud to say that in the last 5.5 years, we have transitioned almost 70% of our senior staff. And that's due to retirements or choosing different career paths, to other changes. The reason why I think that's so important is I'm not sure that anyone in this room can look at this list and remember all of these transitions that have happened. That Aaron Mance was able to step into a role that had been led by Sally Rogel for 30 years. That that Chris Coriel was able to step in seamlessly into a role that Jim Boynito had prior to him. That Rodrigo Polino remade the concept of the basin and is now the harbor master. We've also added 5 lieutenants and a captain in the fire department for the first time in the history of the city to have paid paid leadership. We have transitioned a building inspector and completely remade the building department. Those are all things that you don't see day to day, but I think it's important to pause and remember, or to understand that there is so much more that happens Monday through Friday than what happens on a random Wednesday night in this chamber. In terms of senior staff additions, taking the leadership of senior staff, we have added in important areas, places that the community is demanding more and better. We've added 2 building inspectors in the last 4 years. We have, and I'll talk more about the building department in a minute, but it is the projects, as you know, are getting bigger and more complicated, and our residents have high expectations for service. And what Guy has done in that office has been phenomenal. What Christian has done in that office is phenomenal, and we've added staff there. Adding support for Ryan Coyne in his position as city engineer and head of public works makes life better for our residents. They get better response. They get more timely response. And then the list goes on. As you know, and I'm thrilled that we have 4 settled union contracts for 4 more years. And that's something that the city hadn't experienced before. What Brian Shea did in that regard was wonderful. What we were able to do with our union leadership, we have tremendous relationships. We work well together, and it shows in the fact that it took 9 months to settle 4 contracts. And then finally, the little things. You look at the surroundings here. You look at what we did in the mayor's conference room and the annex, and what we're doing in offices. We want to create a more welcoming environment, not just for residents, but for the people who spend 8 hours a day here. And so that's all part of that personnel effort. Public safety, and I won't read through every one of these. I can't think of a single area where we've invested more, maybe infrastructure than we have in public safety. We've increased staffing by 30% in the fire department. We have one of only 2 certified swiftwater rescue teams in Westchester County. We have acquired 14 patrol vehicles, ladders, boats, engines. We have the first ever former mutual aid arrangement with our neighbors, Port Chester, Mamaroneck, Rybrook, Purchase. Talking to Kenny Barton before I came over here, Kenny Barton and what he's done at EMS has been nothing short of remarkable. You know, we have a 6-minute average response time to over 6,000 calls between Rye and Rybrook and Portchester in a given year. I mean, you can't. There's not a better statistic that you can cite. You know, and the quality of that service and what Kenny has done there. The installation of AEDs across city properties and the fact that we trained over 50% of the city staff in CPR last year. The work that Commissioner Copey and Detective Caputo, Al Hine, and FUSO have done with the schools, and I'm not talking about just Rye City School District, Rye Neck, and Rye Country Day School. We are at the forefront of planning and response to the extent that there is an emergency at any one of those schools. You know, those are things that are being undertaken by department heads, by the leadership, of the city. And the things we're doing for residents in terms of emergency response preparedness. Capital projects, look, there is no doubt that there is a list of things in the city that need to be improved from an infrastructure standpoint. It's something that, the mayor and other council members 8 years ago identified as being have-to-dos, and I'm absolutely in support of that. And there are things that have been delayed. There's no doubt about that. But I think more importantly is we also have to recognize in the midst of everything that's been going on the last 5 or 6 years, what has been accomplished. We have paved 40 lane miles of roads in this town, and that doesn't include the county roads like Midland and Theodore Frem. We have, as a community, reinvented Rye Rec. I mean, you can't walk across that campus and think that is nothing short of remarkable. Most of that has been done by Public Works, which is, again, an amazing accomplishment. Parking lot 1, is, maybe for a community to say, a parking lot's a big deal. Well, I think if you've tried a parking lot in that parking lot in the last 25 years and you go over there today, it's environmentally better, it's aesthetically amazing, and it's much more convenient and better for our residents. The fuel depot at DPW, the landscaping and work that has been completed at Sterling Field for public safety, aesthetics, and environmental sensitivity. And then you see all the things below, but I also want to point out, and this again gets lost in the sauce. We settled, a federal lawsuit a number of years ago regarding our sanitary sewer, and no one likes what happened with the streets this summer, all the construction that's been going on these last several years. But we relined or replaced, through the city's working contractors, 40,000 feet of sewer lines in the city. We replaced the 4 major pump stations. We replaced the sewer main that went under the Blind Brook. It was the main sewer main from all the downtown businesses. 81 manhole repairs. I mean, this was a monumental task. It was the single biggest infrastructure project in the city's history, $23 million. But again, I think we have to, from time to time, remind ourselves of why this is, so important. The dredge of the boat basin and the channel, and more recently, the neighborhood stormwater improvements. We're not getting everything done. No one ever gets everything done on the time that they want it done, but by golly, we've accomplished a lot as a community in a short period of time with our capital investment. In terms of technology, if there is a bright spot that came out of COVID, it's what we did with technology in the city. 4 weeks after the onslaught of COVID, we moved all city staff to remote. We provided them laptops, scanners, and printers, and we transitioned 100% of all city services to remote. You did not have to come to City Hall. The only exception are marriage licenses, which under state law you can't do remotely. We have used that opportunity to invest in technology in such a major way, which accomplishes 2 things. It means that residents have greater convenience, and it means that our workforce is more efficient in what they do. And again, you can look at this list of how we have embraced technology for those 2 purposes. We have new software in our tax assessors department, the finance department, personnel, the way that we are scheduling and tracking fire inspections and fog inspections, the recent adoption of Engage software, for when the council and the community are considering major projects, and the way that we accumulate comments and data and information all in one place. 311 has been a raging success. Our response time for resident notices and complaints is under 6 days now. A pothole, a sidewalk, a tree, my garbage didn't get picked up. And it's all online. You don't have to chase Public Works. You don't have to come to the city manager's office. It's all done there. And you can see if we're being responsive or not. You track your complaint. Installation of public Wi-Fi in all of our public areas. Something that parents have wanted for a long time. I want to be able to stream my kids' baseball game to their grandparents in Florida, but we have no Wi-Fi. Well, Ryan Coyne took it upon himself to do that. Again, that embracement of technology, and I think the next agenda item is yet one more step as we look to move to managed services for all of our IT for City Hall, or for the city. Probably the thing I'm most impressed with is what we've done with new initiatives, and this has all been instigated by our department heads. I talked about human resources and the amazing work that Yuka has done. Governmental communications. 6 years ago, we had Ride TV. Today, we have, through the efforts of Nicole, we have a brand new imagined website with access to amazing information, but also in a much more organized way. We have a city app. We actively use social media. I don't do it because I can't, but Nicole does. The way that we do press releases and coordinate with police and fire, EMS, and others. Our emergency communications, that's all been streamlined, and that's done with the efforts of Nicole, with the help from a lot of other city staff. But the way we communicate with our residents, I think, is best of class in this county. Skilled labor, which is something I've talked about in the last couple of capital presentations, is that starting with COVID and with what we did at Rec Park, Ryan Coyne, he gets the lion's share of the credit, along with George Vega and Eric Kingsbury, has pivoted Public Works in a way that benefits all of us. We're using our Public Works employees, when time permits, for projects that either, one, wouldn't get done at all or would cost the city a tremendous amount more. I know that there have been concerns expressed that somehow this is slowing our process on other capital projects. Suffice to say that the things that Public Works is doing are projects that are away from what the council has identified as priorities. So when I say that we did parking lot 1, well, that was something that we needed to do under the Save the Sound settlement. And instead of having a contractor do that, Public Works did it, and it saved us a tremendous amount of money, and we were able to get it done in less than 30 days. Fire department staffing and leadership. In 2019, we had 16 firefighters. We had one administrative lieutenant that worked 9 to 5, 5 days a week. As we sit here today, we have 20 firefighters, we have 5 lieutenants, and a captain. And with that, and it's one of the things that we negotiated with the union when we went to the larger staffing, is that each of the lieutenants and the captain are trained fire inspectors. So in 2019, the administrative lieutenant did 3 fire inspections in this city. This year, we're on track to do 150. That's better for the community. It's safer for the community, and it's being done, with our fire leadership. The last council meeting, I spent a lot of time talking about financial policies and improvements. We've made drastic changes in the way that we invest the city's money. The way that we approach the CIP and use it as a joint planning and financial document. Even something as simple as the budget book. The budget book is 100 pages shorter today than it was in 2019. not because we're providing less information, but because we're providing it in a better, concise way for people to understand. And thanks to Joe Fazzino for that. Fleet management plan. The city has never had a fleet management plan. The reason why in the last 12 months we were able to come to you to ask to buy a ladder truck, a boat, and additional vehicles is because we created a fleet management plan 4 years ago, and we're investing annual budget monies in order to do that. So, that has been, as recent as today, Joe and I have come up with an approach in how to invest our bond proceeds as we're waiting on some of these projects to roll out. And there is a Treasury investment product that will allow us to invest without having to rebate to the federal government arbitrage, which will next year probably save them, or this year save the city around $150,000. So it's that active work that has been so important, and again, not something that you're going to see in the newspaper, but it is going to save taxpayers money and creates greater efficiency. Building department staffing and consultants, I talked about it a minute ago. What Christian and Guy have done has made it so much better for both residents, builders, others coming to town that want to build the bigger house, develop a project. It has become ever so more complicated. Projects are bigger, more expensive, and people expect service, and they have done a wonderful job with that, both in staffing as well as the management of that. Brian taking the leadership on what we've done with grants. There's a reason why we've received almost $25 million in grants in the last 5 years. It's not just dumb luck. It's a strategy. It's an aggressive approach. And because of that, you're able to complete projects that otherwise would never have happened. We don't have the financial means to do that on our own. And the last thing on these initiatives that I'll share, and this is my own pet peeve, is that this community is impressive. This city government is impressive. And to a resident or to a visitor to the outside world, we need to look what I will call institutional quality. So if you look at our business cards, if you look at our presentations, if you look at the way our website looks, it's all by design. It all ties together, but it's to reflect the stature that we are. And it's a small initiative, but I think it's every bit as important as some of these other things, is that we have the image that we want to project. And it's serious, it's important, people pay a lot of money in taxes, and we want it to reflect that. The last thing, and I'm sorry if you'll just humor me for a couple more minutes. One of the things I've done over my time here is from time to time I'll come across a document that I think is interesting, and I'll read it and how it reflects on what we're doing now versus when it was done. Rice's history is very lengthy. Its modern history is actually relatively young. I mean, we became a city in 1942. What I left you are a series of documents that I've come across over these last several years. And I'd like to read just a couple of sections because I think it's very telling as you talk about priorities tonight or consider the future. The first is a report of a citizens' nonpartisan committee that was established in 1958. And this was after the city charter was established, and it was to debate and discuss what is the best form of government for this community. As I quote, the committee recommends that the charter of the city be amended to provide for the appointment by the city council of a city manager who will act as an executive officer of the council and will be responsible for the administration of the various departments. The recommendation is for three basic reasons. Number one, the committee believes that the appointment of a city manager is necessary because the business of government has grown to a point where it requires full-time a paid executive. The council manager form of government, which separates legislative actions from administrative function and tends to insulate the administrative function from political pressures, is sound in principle and is the most effective and efficient system of government. And then 3, relieving the mayor and council of the burden of administrative duties will make the service in these offices more attractive and able for these busy men and women. This document ultimately did lead to the charter being amended and the adoption of a manager form of government. Interestingly enough, 2 of the things that survived that we are required today is, number 1 is it requires the production of an annual report, which happens in February of every year. And number 2, it requires the manager to attend every planning commission meeting. I did include in your package as well a draft of proposed charter of the charter from 1964. I'm not going to read any of that, but most of it is what we have today in our charter. You know, there's obviously amendments over time and changes, but the charter from 1964 is in fact much of the charter that we have for the city today. The other document, and I'll move quickly here, but I've included a City Hall dedication document that I came across. As some people may know, one of the early mayors of the city, John Motley Moorhead, donated a little over $500,000 to build this building. He was presented plans and asked for his support, and after a couple of weeks he came back to the committee and said he had no interest in participating in that plan, but if they would increase it in size and stature, he would fund the entire thing. And so, in 1964, which apparently was a big year, this building was dedicated, and Mr. Moorhead funded all of that. More to the point, the last 2 things I want to note. In 1967, the League of Women Voters put out a pamphlet, and it's in your package. It's that yellow small thing, and it kind of goes over the history of Rye and the attributes and the budget process and the like. But I found a couple of sections particularly enlightening. One is entitled Future Problems. And this is in 1967. And I quote, "With much to Rye's credit, due largely to enlightened leadership and an interested citizenry, there are many problems yet to be solved. Alleviating flooding conditions along Beaver Swamp and Blind Brook rests in the hands of higher governmental agencies. Rising land and building costs have virtually eliminated construction of moderate and low-income housing for people who work in Rye and wish to live here. Private development and city cooperation are also the key to improvements of the central business district, with the city providing more parking areas. Rye faces all of these problems plus many more to come with rising cost and population and increasing pressures to maximize development. To maintain the quality of residential, commercial, recreation, and education the city now enjoys are the challenges for the future." And the last thing I want to cite, funny enough, is a letter that we discovered in the wall upstairs in the manager's office when we were doing construction a couple of years ago. And it was put there by the city manager's staff in September of 2000. And again, I'll quote, "Our city government is led by an active and aggressive volunteer corps of elected and appointed citizens. Issues confronting Rye in the year 2000 include the continued shortage of parking in the central business district, the preservation of open space for recreation, overdevelopment in a time of prosperity, and improvements of many of the city's facilities, including our dilapidated police headquarters, our aging fire stations, and City Hall itself. Only time will tell where Rye will be when this note is found. However, if the past is any indication, the wisdom and planning of our predecessors has assisted in today's stability. We did not make any public proclamations as to this note's existence. We hope it is stumbled upon and found by responsible parties. Please share our thoughts with those who serve the city and let them know those who have come before worked in this building, dealt with citizens and issues, and contemplated our future in a manner not dissimilar from your current tools." I guess the last thing I want to say is thank you. This was supposed to be a 6 or 9 month exercise that became a 5.5 year endeavor through COVID and Ida and Usry and ICAS and other things. The city has a gift in 160 people who work here. Nothing gets done across the city and in this building without 14 leaders and the 145 employees that they lead. From the first day I was here, without exception, they all provided an awful lot of patience and kindness and support, which I probably didn't deserve at the time. I promised them all when I started doing this that I would need their help and that I would definitely be making mistakes, but that I always would have the best of intentions. And I think over time, many of them grow to trust that. I think that the role of the city manager of this community is twofold. And number one is to listen and support the department heads and the senior staff, both financial support, guidance, and resources. And number two, which is probably even more important, is to protect them from political involvement and other distractions. They know what to do, and they've been doing it for a long time, and they will continue to do it. Secondly, the boards and commissions and volunteers I've had the pleasure of working with and getting to know have been unbelievably supportive, and in many of those cases have been doing this for decades for not a lot of fanfare and certainly for no pay. The Planning Commission, the Zoning Board, BAR, Rec, Golf they're all tremendous in the time that they have given. I thank the council members, both this council and the past, for an awful lot of support. This job at times is hard, and being able to rely on decision makers to be supportive both publicly and privately is tremendously important. And then last, for my wife, Mary Beth, who, although I think this is her first council meeting in person, I don't think she has missed but a couple in 5.5 years. She she knows more about what's going on in this city, publicly and privately, than most other people here, and she's promised me that she will be quiet about that. But she has been incredibly patient through an awful lot of late nights and bobs and weaves. But this has been an extraordinarily satisfying experience. I'm thrilled to have been a part of it. It's nice to walk away from something where you feel like the things are a little bit better than where you arrive for whatever the reason is. And so I thank you all for that.
Feels like such a